My guest today is award-winning director and cinematographer Nick Canfield. Now, his first film, the feature music documentary, The Reverend, which many of you saw the interview I did with Nick and The Reverend himself right here on Bond on Cinema. But his camera work can be seen in documentaries such as Iris, which was distributed by Magnolia Pictures, even The 50-Year Argument on HBO, directed by Martin Scorsese, and Born to Fly, which actually premiered at South by Southwest, and Making a Murderer on Netflix, just to name a few. But his latest documentary film, Oh Yeah, premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and is our topic today. It's the story of the iconic electronic music group Yello and the phenomenon of their 1980s hit song, Oh Yeah, which explores the song's cultural impact and its enduring place in the American psyche. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning filmmaker Nick Canfield and his new short film documentary, Oh Yeah, to the show. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, Ward. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, where in the world did you get the idea to do a film documentary on the song Oh Yeah by Yello?
Well, if you remember from The Reverend, that film took me like 5 years, sort of observational verite just to follow him. And I was like, well, that was fun, but let me try to narrow the scope a little bit, see if I can do something that is a little bit more specific and it won't take quite so long. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do a documentary about one song. Actually, that song is so pervasive in our culture. It's utilized in so many things and so many advertisements. It must have seeped, other than being in so many things from my childhood, it seeped into my subconscious one night, and I had a dream about it actually, and I woke up the next morning being like, you know what, that song is everywhere. Like, what is the deal with it? What is the story behind it? Why is it everywhere? And so I decided I wanted to make a film about it.
It's so funny because here we have a 4-minute song, no musical instruments, completely electronic, total 1980s. And it was made famous because John Hughes used it in the iconic Ferrari scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And it kind of happened by chance, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the story of how it got picked for that scene is in the film. But yeah, the song was already out, had already been released about a year before that, and it was just an album song. They didn't release it as a single. It didn't chart or anything like that. And then John Hughes and his music supervisor, who's in the film, chose it for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it just took off after that. And then it was utilized in a lot of other 80s things back to back. The Secret of My Success, which some people might remember, was utilized. You just used it even more than Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And then it just sort of catapulted into our pop culture from there.
Yeah, it was so good to see that you got Alan Ruck in your film. And, we all know that he played Cameron in Ferris Bueller, which was really kind of funny because, he would, if he was standing there by himself, he would have never taken his dad's Ferrari out of that garage. But what's funny is we've all had that one friend in which we can't stop and we succumb to the invisible power of peer pressure. And it's almost like now that song is going to be our music score from here on out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's there's this certain emotions that the song conveys, which is no restraints and gratification, and these things that are kind of quintessentially American qualities, but also 80s cultural qualities. And we do have those people. We all have that friend or those moments where you're trying to do the right thing, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it was so funny because in this documentary, Reggie Watts has the best line to explain this song. And he said, this isn't good for me, but I'm doing it anyway. And like he said, it's like that naughty moment in life. But the cool thing is sometimes that moment is something that we talk about forever.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we all want to have those moments, and that's why we all want to be like Ferris Bueller. You know what I mean? We all need to kind of take a day like he does and have no restraints. And I think the song has a real emotional connection with those feelings, and that's why it's utilized so much in Ferris and in like advertisements and so much today.
Well, yeah, let me ask you this, because with both members of Yellow, and it was so great that to see them discuss this song in your documentary. They are still amazed at the power of that song, even today after all of these years. I mean, they're still in shock that that song took off.
I think that's right. Yeah, they still can't quite believe it, and that just kind of speaks to who they are as artists and musicians. And they don't really care, in a way that the song is famous or that how that happened. They're just kind of still together, still making music, and they do it because they love it. And so obviously they benefited a lot from that song taking off, but they didn't really do anything. It just kind of happened. So it's sort of it is a surprise for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that they've probably had incredible royalties just off that one song, which for them helped them to continue their careers even into 2025.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, I think that song is kind of covering, most of their budget. They do have other hits, more in the German speaking world, but yeah, as Boris, one of the members of Yellow, says in the film, it's like the song, it continues still to this day and makes the circus of Yellow still possible.
Well, have you ever sat down and did a complete count on how many movies and how many commercials that have used that song? Oh yeah.
Well, a complete count would be tough, especially once you included all the commercials. But yeah, it's the music that plays in The Simpsons when Duffman enters. If you're the right age, you remember it from the '80s, and if you're younger, you remember it from being the Twix commercial music in the '90s. Like right now, it was this year at the Super Bowl halftime show ended. It was the first song that played in the first ad after the Super Bowl halftime show ended this year.
Man,
So
that is, what is so amazing to have one song become part of not only just American pop culture, but it's global pop culture. Because now with social media, oh yeah is actually part of posting a reel on Instagram that, we could use the song to add a little bit of flavor to our post. And this song has that infinite life to it, I guess. So now it's a complete mainstay, and not many songs can achieve that.
that's right. Yes, I explored that in the film. Not many songs do achieve that, and social media gives it a whole new use. I mean, because of which is Yellow itself, like you said, doesn't have any instruments in it. It's something sampled, and now it's going back the other way that people can take pieces of it and sample it, and it's perfect for 15 seconds because it right away it conveys those emotions so perfectly, and so I think it does have a whole new life that will maybe go on forever.
Yeah, it's funny because I kept trying to think of what other songs out there that have achieved the same power as oh yeah, because like now we live in a world, like now we literally live in a world 15 seconds at a time. And it's funny, you go on Instagram and somebody makes a post and we have our volume up on our phone and there's no song. We're like, oh, okay. But then when you add a song to your post, people are paying attention to it a lot more because you're trying to use the song, like you said, to convey a feeling or an emotion or an act to that post. Oh yeah is like the perfect one. And I kept thinking, what other songs out there that people would use to kind of convey a similar emotion? And I couldn't find one.
Yeah, obviously there are other songs that are super catchy and that people use and pop up, right away. But this one conveys certain emotions, really, really instantly, and that's why, as the music, as Tarquin Gotch, who's John Hughes' music supervisor, says in the film that the way it's used in the film is to tell people what the characters are thinking or feeling. And one of the things I want people to do is think about how music makes us feel and how people use music to make us feel a certain way. And I think people are learning that also because they're doing it themselves now. You're making a post and you have to, and if you put music in, like you say, it's gonna convey some emotion right away. And so I think I want people to think about that.
Yeah, it's funny because you go on, let's say you go on Spotify, you pull up the song, you can see, oh yeah, it would have, multi-million plays on it. Then you go to like Instagram, and even though they don't really convey a lot of the numbers, that the numbers from, let's say, Instagram, maybe even TikTok, far exceed than you listening to the whole song. And I actually pulled it up on Spotify because I'm like, okay, we know the oh yeah part, and but has anybody ever sat down to listen to the whole song in the last few years? Because it's one of those songs where we know that one little clip, but what does the whole song actually sound like? And it's a very catchy song. Now, I noticed in your film that Yello performs the song to a massive crowd. So when you filmed it, what was the energy like when they started to perform it?
That was footage that they gave us because they perform so seldomly that there was not a lot of chances for me to film. I wanted to film them performing myself, but they were, they don't do it so much. I mean, they're an electronic group, so there's no instrument playing, and it's Boris making the songs in the studio, and so they perform very seldomly. Just sort of also makes them this sort of mysterious duo that you actually hardly ever get to see. And so that performance was in Germany in 2016 or 2017, and so they haven't even performed since then. So I'm hoping that the song will help lure them out. The film will help lure them out of their little Swiss cave and come and perform again.
I laughed when I was watching the documentary because I grew up through the 80s. We know all of the John Hughes movies. We know of some of the biggest acts came out in the 1980s. We had the British invasion, so to speak, that we call it, with Duran Duran and Simple Minds, Crowded House, the list goes on. And I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, all of us quote that one line from Oh Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, what other song do we actually quote just in something very quick? Maybe it's in a conversation. Maybe we're making a joke with somebody. And all I could come up with was, Who Let the Dogs Out? Because it's the only other song that I know that we would just like blurt out one line and then just go on about our life.
Right. That's right. I mean, you think about like even songs that have totally went around the world, like Despacito, or that wasn't that many years ago. And I remember hearing Despacito playing in Ukraine. I was there, and I was, and but that's not a song that now, you might still hear it years later, but you don't hear people just quoting it. So it has to enter another level of the zeitgeist, I think, just to achieve that. And have some emotional meaning that, other than just being catchy, and that's the boundary that Oh Yeah breaks.
Well, see, what is so amazing about this documentary, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you get a chance to see Oh Yeah, this whole documentary will put a smile on your face. And if you lived through the 80s like I did, you're going to start remembering things, during that decade. Because I think, even though I love the 1970s music scene, because to me, no one can beat the 70s. But then the 80s had its own personal flavor. And then after that, everything just went downhill. But, but the 80s, but what put a smile on my face that I thought was really funny was I didn't realize that in the 1980s with Yello, if you compare both of them to all the other groups, they already looked older than everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they've been around already for since the 70s, making electronic music as really some of the pioneers. I mean, there's Kraftwerk and then them, and but they didn't get popular. Also, as I found from working with all this different archival material, all these photos and all this footage that we found, is that Dieter, who one of the two of them, the sort of the front man, the one who does the most of the singing, he kind of always looks like he's like 55. Like you can't tell. Like there's pictures of him doing like his avant-garde like performance art in the 70s and he looks 50, and then he's doing it again in the 90s and he looks 50 at the same age. I can't tell. I can't tell what's going on with him. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. That's partly something in the water in Switzerland.
Well, it was so funny because it reminded me when we all know, looking at Steve Martin when he was on Saturday Night Live, he looked old then because of the gray hair. And now you look at him and he still looks the same. So when I looked at Yello, I'm like, that's the same thing. And it was so funny because when I looked at Dieter, by watching the documentary, I'm thinking, why does he look so familiar? And then it dawned on me, he is almost a splitting image of Elvis's bass singer, J.D. Sumner. Had the same look. Of course, J.D. was extremely tall, but just they looked like they would almost be twin brothers. And that's what took me by surprise. And then when I went back and you were like in the documentary, you're showing all of these older photos. You show Dieter standing on the street doing performance art, and he always looked like he was 50 years old.
I'm going to have to look up what this guy Elvis Presley's bass player looks like. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, J.D. Sumner. Yeah, I mean, one of the deepest bass singers in music. Of course, he's passed on now. But when you see a picture of him, you're like, oh my God. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, that can't be JD's brother because this guy's German. But still, I had a whole lot of fun watching this documentary. And has it kind of sparked maybe some more interest into future music documentaries? Because to me, my favorite documentaries have to be on music history.
Yeah, I mean, I've made directed 3 documentaries now, and they're all kind of music related. I don't know if that's really by design, but it has been fun. I did another one recently about the world's foremost collector of Bob Dylan memorabilia, donating his life's work to the Bob Dylan Museum. So that one's interesting, and we're looking for a home for that. And I'm doing another documentary that is not about music, just to take a break. It's about ski jumping, and then I am working on a couple other music things, including another one about one song.
Hey, I love it. I love it. I have to ask because you're both a director and a cinematographer, and a friend of mine is the cinematographer on Oh Yeah. So I have to ask, when you're doing a documentary or you're working on a project in which you are directing, do you bring in a cinematographer, or are you more of doing both jobs at once?
It's a little bit of both. It depends on the film. So for the Dylan Collector one, I shot it all myself because it's mostly him in his apartment and at the museum, and it's very intimate and very verite, observational. Whereas, oh yeah, there's a lot of interviews, so I can't really shoot that stuff myself and conduct the interview at the same time. So I have other cinematographers who I work with who set up the interview and work the interview, and then the stuff you see with Boris and Dieter just naturally in the studio kind of thing. I shot some of that myself with someone else, so it's a mixture.
So how long did it take you to film Oh Yeah?
I mean, the whole process took a couple of years, but I'm usually doing other projects at the same time, and a lot of that is it takes a lot of time to try to get Reggie Watts to agree to do it. You know what I mean? You have to go through all his PR people and everything, and to schedule with Alan Ruck. He's busy, he's shooting Secession and stuff like that. So it's hard to that kind of thing takes months and months and months, but. I filmed with Boris and Dieter with Yello first, and that was only 2 days in Switzerland. And then the other ones are interviews, and then there's a lot of scouring for archival material, which we got some wonderful stuff. So
what was the reception like at the Tribeca Film Festival when you debuted it?
Oh, it was great. We had a sold out premiere, and there were a lot of laughs. I was really happy, and everybody really cracked up with this movie. I mean, I think Boris and Dieter are really hilarious, and everyone who watches it will certainly laugh a lot. So I'm looking forward to audiences being able to see it live more, and then eventually it'll be released online around the end of the year.
It's kind of funny. It's almost like you could do a documentary on the one-hit wonders that changed the world from the 1980s.
You could. Well, one of the things I'm working on is maybe doing something about the origins of songs and how they kind of came to be, how they came to be written, and some of these ones that are very impactful in our culture, and plenty of them are from the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 1980s for music is the era in which most people can quote at least one or two lines of a song and not know the rest of the song. And I think the 80s is perfect for that. It's like if you watched We're the World, if you watched Live Aid, we all know songs that we can at least sing one line and we're good. And of course, Oh Yeah falls into that category perfectly. But I think Oh Yeah transcends all of the songs in the 80s just for the emotional impact.
I think that's true. Yeah, the emotional resonance makes it kind of stand out. But for some reason, there were a lot of one hit wonders in the 80s. I don't know what it was about that decade that there were all these one hit wonder bands coming out of nowhere. When we think about the 60s and the 70s music, and obviously there are some one hit wonders, but there's a lot of hits by these bands that were around for a number of years. And probably in the 80s, there's just some band coming in with some crazy video and some crazy song, and then you never hear from them ever again. You know what I mean?
You
So,
know, one of the things that we always laughed about from the 80s was how many songs can you think of and name in which Bryan Adams and Michael McDonald sang background?
right.
Because there were songs that were considered one-hit wonders in which they sang background on, or you're in the car, you're listening to the radio, or maybe you're listening to Spotify, and all of a sudden you're like, I know that voice. I know that voice in the background, but the band isn't famous, but the voice in the background is.
Right. Right. Yeah. It was a weird time musically. I don't, it's hard to explain why. I don't know. That's a whole other documentary just about 80s music and why.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I can't wait to see the rest of the documentaries that you're working on, and you're always welcome back. And have you touched base with the Reverend lately?
Oh yes, Reverend Vince. I still see him all the time. We did a screening of the film in upstate New York. I had a little run up there just a few weeks ago. So he and I went up there. He performed, and he still performs in New York every Monday night, just like he does in the film. So without fail, he's going on 27 years now, and so I still go and see him. About once a month. So I'll give him your best.
Hey, yeah. Tell the Reverend I said hello, and keep on keeping on and doing what he's doing over there. I know that he brings a lot of joy to a lot of people with what he does, and you are too, because like I said, I absolutely fell in love with this documentary. It brings back so many memories, but it brings us into the backstory of this incredible song, so it helps us to appreciate it that much more.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get to know Yellow, and I guarantee that you'll find them to be quite characters for sure.
That's it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you attend an upcoming film festival, be sure to see Nick Canfield's Oh Yeah. As if you are a child of the 1980s, it'll bring back a flood of memories. And Nick, again, I want to thank you so much for connecting with me again and allowing me to see this incredible music documentary.
Thank you, Ward. I really appreciate you seeing it, and I hope everybody gets a chance to see it in their towns or eventually online at the end of the year. And people can follow along on the Instagram at Nick Can Film for updates on where it's going to be. And thanks again, Ward. This was really fun.
Well, you bet. And ladies and gentlemen, we can all say the same thing. Oh, yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on your way to work on Spotify and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.